Once upon a time, in a land not so far from here, a story waited, patient and golden, to be told. A boy, a beanstalk reaching the sky, and a world above the clouds no one knew existed. This is where our tale begins. At the edge of a quiet valley stood a small stone cottage. The roof sagged. The garden had gone dry. The fence leaned. The walls cracked. The chimney barely breathed. Inside lived a widow and her young son Jack. They had very little, but they had each other. The table held one bowl between them. The fire was low. The bread was almost gone. His mother's eyes were kind, but heavy with worry. Jack looked at her hands, rough and tired. He wished with everything he had that he could help. In the small barn behind the cottage lived Bessie. She was old now, her coat dull, her steps slow. For years she had given them milk to sell at market. But this morning, she had nothing left to give. Jack rested his forehead against her side and sighed. His mother tied Bessie's rope and placed it in Jack's hand. Her voice was steady, but her eyes told another story. "Take her to market," she said. "Bring back what you can." Jack nodded and looked down the long, dusty road. He did not look back. He did not want her to see his face. The road wound gently between green hedges and wildflowers. Birds called from fence posts. The morning felt kind. Bessie walked slowly beside him, patient and quiet. Jack kicked at stones and thought about coins and bread. He had no idea his whole life was about to change. The old man was sitting on the stone wall, as if he had always been there. His eyes were silver and sharp and far too bright for his old face. His coat was a patchwork of greens and browns, his hat wide and crooked. "Good morning, boy," he said. "Where are you taking that fine cow?" Jack stopped. Something about this man made his chest feel strange. The old man opened his hand slowly. 5 small beans lay on his wrinkled palm. They were deep green, flecked with gold and purple. They shimmered even in plain morning light, as if alive. Jack had never seen anything so quietly extraordinary in his life. "Magic beans," the old man said. "Plant them tonight. By morning you will have something beyond all imagining." Jack looked at the beans, then at Bessie, then at the beans again. Before his better sense could stop him, he held out the rope. The old man smiled his crooked smile and said not another word. His mother's face fell the moment she saw him return alone. When Jack opened his palm and showed her the beans, she went very still. Then she took them from his hand and threw them out the window. Her voice broke as she turned away. "We have nothing now, Jack. Nothing." Those words followed him up the stairs and into the dark. Jack lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling.
No saber.
No sound except his mother crying softly below. He turned toward the wall and pulled the rough blanket up. The candle burned down to almost nothing. He closed his eyes, not knowing that outside, something was already beginning. While Jack slept, the earth in the garden shifted. One bean, then another, found something deep and ancient in the soil. A shoot appeared, then a stem, then a trunk wide as an oak. By midnight the beanstalk had swallowed the sky. By dawn it had reached a world nobody knew was there. Jack woke to a strange green darkness in his room. He pressed his face to the window, and his breath fogged the glass. There it was, a beanstalk, so tall it disappeared into the clouds. Its leaves were wide as rooftops. Its trunk was warm and alive. Jack's heart hammered once, and he was already reaching for his boots. He stood at the foot of it and looked straight up. It twisted upward in perfect spirals, green and gold, and impossibly vast. His hand touched the bark, and it was warm beneath his fingers. He thought of his mother. He thought of beans and gold, and wonder. Then he grabbed the first branch and began to climb. Hand over hand, boot against bark, up and up he went. The village shrank below him until it looked like a toy. The air grew cooler, and the sky grew wider. Green leaves brushed his face and arms as he climbed through them. Each branch he left behind felt like leaving the ordinary world further away. Then the clouds took him. Cool and damp they wrapped around him, gray and white and soft. The world below disappeared. The world above was not yet visible. He was between two lives, between two worlds, climbing blind. He kept going. Upward was the only direction that made sense. His hand found solid ground, and he pulled himself up. He stood and looked around and could not find the right words. A vast pale world stretched in every direction, firm and strange and silent. The sky above was a different blue than the sky he knew. And far in the distance, enormous and impossible, stood a castle. Jack walked toward it because there was nothing else to do. With every step the castle grew larger and the world grew quieter. Stone blocks the size of houses. Towers that touched the sky. He was a single small boy on a vast empty plain. He kept walking. Courage is often just the absence of good alternatives. He stood at the bottom of the door and raised his fist. The knock was barely a sound against all that ancient wood. He waited. The silence above him was enormous. Then slow footsteps, then a creak, then light spilling downward. And then a face, far above, looking down at him with kind surprise. The giant's wife. She was kind. That was the first thing Jack noticed. Her eyes were warm and brown and full of tired goodness. She looked down at him for a long moment before she spoke. "You poor small thing," she said. "Come in quickly. Be very quiet. My husband will be home soon, and he does not like visitors." The bread was bigger than his whole body. The broth was warm and deep and smelled of thyme and fire. Jack ate with both hands and was grateful and frightened in equal measure. The kitchen around him was the size of a whole village. He had never felt so small and so fed at the same time. The ground begins to shake. The cups rattled first. Then the liquid in the pots began to tremble in slow rings. Then the dust on the shelves shifted and fell in thin curtains. Jack looked at the giant's wife. Her face had gone very still. The footsteps were coming. Heavy, slow. The doors burst open, and he filled the frame completely. Red-faced and vast and smelling of earth and iron and old storms. His cloak swirled. His boots struck the stone like hammers. The whole kitchen shook when he crossed the threshold. He was the largest, loudest, most terrifying thing Jack had ever not seen. He stopped in the middle of the kitchen and lifted his great nose. "Fee-fi-fo-fum," he bellowed. "I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." His voice shook the crockery and bent the candle flames. Inside the teapot on the shelf, Jack did not breathe at all. "Nonsense, dear," said his wife, not looking up from her pot. "That is only the stew. Come and sit down." The giant grumbled like a hillside settling after rain. He looked around the kitchen with narrow amber eyes. Then he sat, and the chair groaned beneath him, and supper was served. Inside the teapot it was warm and smelled of old tea leaves. Jack pressed his knees to his chest and barely fit. Through the small round opening of the spout, he watched the kitchen. The giant was enormous and close and terrifyingly real. Jack watched and waited and counted his own quiet heartbeats. "Bring me my gold," the giant said. 2 enormous sacks came down, and their contents poured across the table. Coins glinted and clattered and stacked in towers of warm yellow light. The giant counted slowly, one by one, finger by thick finger. His small eyes were satisfied and careful. He loved his gold. The fire burned low. The counting slowed. The giant's great head began to nod, once, then twice. His eyes closed and his breathing deepened into something vast and slow. The snoring rolled through the walls like far-off thunder. The kitchen went still. Jack began to move. Jack climbed down from the shelf with slow, careful hands. He found the chair leg and wrapped himself around it. Sliding down was faster than he expected. The floor came up hard, and he landed on his boots and steadied himself. The giant slept on. The gold gleamed on the table above. The bag was heavier than anything he had ever lifted. He grabbed the neck of it and heaved with everything he had. Coins shifted, and one fell and rang out on the wood. Jack froze. The giant shifted. The snoring continued. Jack ran. His boots barely touched the floor. The coins spilled behind him in a scattered golden trail. The door was ahead. Light was ahead. The outside world was ahead. He did not look back. He did not slow down. The door gave way, and the pale, strange sky opened up before him. The beanstalk swayed gently as he climbed down. The bag of gold was slung across his back, heavy and real. Below him the village appeared slowly through the clouds. His arms ached and his hands burned, but he did not stop. Home was below him, and it was getting closer with every step. The coins scattered across the table, and his mother pressed her hands to her face. The kitchen filled with warm golden light. Jack watched her eyes go wide, then wet, then something like hope. They stood together in the glow of it for a long, quiet moment. Outside the window, the beanstalk stood green and patient and waiting, climbing a second time. The gold had carried them for weeks. But Jack found himself at the window again, eyes on the stalk. He told himself it was only curiosity. He almost believed it. He was at the base before the sun was fully up. His hands found the bark, and his feet found the way they already knew. The door was just as tall as he remembered. The world above the clouds just as pale and vast and still. He knocked the same small knock against the ancient wood. This time he stood straighter and breathed more slowly. He was still afraid, but he was less surprised by his own fear. She looked at him for a long time before she spoke. Her wide, warm eyes were narrowed now, and her head was tilted. "You look familiar," she said slowly. "Have you been here before?" Jack kept his face very still and his voice very calm. "No, ma'am," he said. "I have never been here in my life." Hidden in the oven. She believed him just enough to let him in. She fed him quickly and quietly and glanced at the door often. When the ground began to shake, she moved without a word. Her great hand was careful and surprisingly gentle as she lowered him in. The oven was dark and cool and smelled of old bread and safety. The giant settled at his table and ate and breathed and filled the room. When supper was done, he leaned forward on his elbows. "Bring me my hen," he said. A small golden hen was set before him, round and gleaming and bright-eyed. The giant pointed one thick finger at her and spoke one word. "Lay." The hen ruffled her golden feathers. She settled herself. She was perfectly still for one held breath of a moment. Then a golden egg appeared beneath her, smooth and warm and glowing. The giant smiled slowly. It was the softest his face had ever looked. Jack, watching from the shadows, had never seen anything more beautiful. He moved when the snoring began, and not a moment before. Across the table, step by careful step, until she was within reach. He gathered her up gently. She was warm and light and golden. She looked at him with sharp black eyes and said nothing. Jack held his breath and turned to run. He ran the way that only real fear teaches you to run. The hen tucked under one arm, her feathers warm against his shirt. The great doors ahead, the pale sky beyond them. One glance back at the enormous shape still sleeping at the table. Then outside and running, and the beanstalk ahead like a lifeline. He placed her on the cottage table and stood back. "Lay," he said, the way the giant had said it. She ruffled her feathers. She settled. A golden egg rolled gently across the rough wooden surface. His mother sat down slowly and covered her mouth with both hands. He knew he should stop. He knew it clearly and completely. The hen laid her golden egg every morning without fail. There was food and warmth and no reason in the world to go back. But Jack was 12 years old, and the beanstalk was still there. He was climbing before he had finished the thought. This time he did not knock. He found the crack in the castle wall and pressed himself through it sideways. The stone was cold and rough against his face and hands. The warm orange light of the kitchen pulled him forward. He slipped inside like a whisper and pressed himself flat against the wall. The pot was taller than he was. Its copper sides curved outward and caught the firelight in warm amber panels. Jack crouched behind it with his back to the cold stone wall. He could hear the kitchen around him, enormous and breathing. He waited. He was good at waiting now. He saw it when the wife set it on the table, small and golden and delicate as a secret. Its frame was carved with fine scrollwork, its strings pale as moonlight. A face was carved at the top of its neck, eyes gently closed. Jack had never wanted anything so quietly and completely in his life. "Play," said the giant, and the strings began to move on their own. Music rose from the harp like light rises from a window. It was not like ordinary music. It was music that lived inside your chest. The whole vast kitchen went still and listened. The giant's great eyes softened and then closed. The hard lines of his face eased one by one. His breathing slowed and deepened until the walls hummed with it. The harp played on, gentle and golden, watching over him. The kitchen was as quiet and warm as the inside of a dream. He crossed the table one step at a time, each step placed with the care of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. The harp glowed before him. The giant slept behind him. He could feel the warmth of the golden strings before he touched them. He reached out. The moment stretched wide and thin and bright. "Master," it called. "Master, help me." The voice rang out like a struck bell, clear and carrying and impossible to ignore. Golden light burst from the strings in every direction. Jack stumbled backward. The giant's eyes flew open. Everything that had been still became motion all at once. He rose from his chair like a storm finding its shape. The table shook. The coins flew. The fire flared behind him. His voice was a sound the walls could not contain. "You," he roared. "You are the thief who has been taking from me." Jack ran before the word was finished. The floor was a vast country, and he crossed it at full speed. The harp blazed against his chest, alive and warm. Behind him each footstep of the giant cracked the stone like thunder. The doors were ahead. The sky was beyond them. He ran the way you run when there is no option but forward. Open pale sky above him. Open white ground below. The castle behind him growing smaller with every stride. The giant behind the castle getting larger with every stride. The beanstalk ahead, its green edge visible at the horizon. Jack ran, and the world blurred around him. The edge came up fast. Jack threw his legs over and grabbed the stalk and began to climb down. Above him the giant reached the edge, breathing like a weather system. The beanstalk shook when those enormous hands gripped it. "Down," Jack told himself. "Just keep going down." Above him the giant descended in long, heavy movements. Below him the village was still impossibly far away. The beanstalk bent and groaned under the weight of them both. Leaves tore free and spiraled slowly downward. Jack climbed faster than he ever had. It was still not fast enough. His feet found the earth and his knees gave way beneath him. The harp landed softly in the grass beside him, still glowing. His mother was already running toward him from the cottage door. Above him the beanstalk swayed, and the ground trembled. Jack looked up once. Then he scrambled to his feet. It was leaning against the woodpile, exactly where it always was. He grabbed it with both hands and turned to face the stalk. His arms were tired. His lungs were burning. His hands shook. He looked up at the shaking beanstalk and then down at the axe. He planted his feet and drew back with everything he had. The first blow bit deep. Wood chips and green sap scattered across the soil around his boots. The second blow split the trunk further, and the stalk lurched above. A sound came from far above. Enormous. Getting closer. The third blow. The fourth. The crack spread wide and clean. It tilted. Slowly at first, the way great things fall. Reluctant and vast. Then faster. Then all at once. Jack pulled his mother back, and they watched it arc across the sky. The sound it made when it began to fall was unlike any sound in the world. It came down across the fields like a fallen sky. The ground shook. A wall of air and dust rolled outward. Enormous leaves settled slowly across the flattened grass. The cloud above tore open and then quietly closed again. And then there was silence. Complete and total and very welcome silence. They stood side by side in the settling dust. The beanstalk lay across the fields, enormous even in defeat. The golden harp played one quiet note beside them in the grass. Jack's mother put her arm around his shoulder without saying anything. Sometimes the right word is no word at all. The harp in the cottage. That evening the harp sat on the mantelpiece above the hearth. It played on its own, soft and unhurried, filling the small rooms. The golden hen slept in her basket. The fire burned well. Jack sat on the floor and let the music move through him. His mother had stopped crying for the first time in a very long time. The golden eggs built them a new life one morning at a time. Workers came. Walls went up. Windows were cut to catch the light. Jack watched from the fence with the hen tucked under his arm. The old cottage stood beside the new one for a while, patient and familiar. Then it too was made whole again, stone by stone. The table held more food than they could finish. The fire was deep and steady in a proper stone hearth. His mother's face had eased. Her hair still fell loose from its bun, but her eyes were different now. Lighter, rested,
quietly glow.
Jack looked at her and thought that this was what all of it had been for. He stood at the gate on a clear night and looked up. The sky was full of stars, more than you could ever count. The harp's music drifted from the window behind him like a warm hand on his shoulder. Where the beanstalk had been, the earth was flat and silent. But something in Jack's eyes still looked upward. Curious, ready, alive. And so the story closes, golden and complete. A boy who listened to something no one else could hear. A beanstalk that reached where no road could go. A world above the clouds that gave and was overcome. And they all lived, warmly and truly, happily ever after.